Alex Pereira was hacked, and what they found couldn't be released online. Videos, rituals, strange voices. The UFC is silent, but fans are certain it wasn't just a fight, but a deal. A deal with someone Pereira himself calls El Branco. You think you know Alex Pereira? The warrior. The stone-faced killer in the cage. The man who ends fights before they even begin. But what if I told you there's another side of him? One he's spent his entire career trying to hide. A side that isn't about glory, or belts, or legacy, but about something much darker. A few weeks ago, his accounts were hacked. Messages, private notes, audio files, all leaked. And what came out wasn't just embarrassing, it was disturbing. Because behind the calm, humble champion that the world admires, there's a story that sounds almost unreal. A story about obsession, power, and things that go way beyond the octagon. At first, people thought it was fake, some kind of smear campaign, a setup. But then more and more data started appearing, screenshots, recordings, and fragments of messages that no PR team could explain away. One of them had a voice message from Pereira himself. You can hear his voice, cold and calm, saying, "They won't understand where the power comes from. Let them think I'm just training." What does that even mean? Those words alone sent fans into chaos. Forums exploded. Reddit threads went wild. Because when you dig deeper, and trust me, people did, that's when things start to get weird. There were notes referencing rituals of strength, coordinates, names, places deep in the Amazon, and somehow, the dates matched perfectly with the nights before some of his biggest victories. Coincidence? Maybe, but the pattern is too precise to ignore. People who once trained with him say he was different before fights. He would disappear for days, come back silent, distant, focused, almost possessed, and no one dared to ask where he went. Alex Pereira built his name on discipline and fearlessness. But what if part of that discipline came from something he never wanted the world to see? What if the strength that made him a champion came at a price he's still paying? After the leaks went public, everything started to spiral. Within hours, journalists, fans, and even other fighters began digging into the files. What they found wasn't just gossip. It was a window into a side of Pereira no one had ever seen before. There were audio clips of late-night conversations, his voice, tired, almost broken, talking about dreams, visions, and forces that follow him. In one of the recordings, he says, "Sometimes I feel it watching me. It doesn't let me sleep before the fight. But when I step inside the cage, it's already there, waiting." You can hear the fear in his tone. Not fear of an opponent, but of something else. Something that's been with him for years. Then came the photos. Unverified, yes, but haunting. Images of a small, dimly lit room with tribal symbols drawn on the walls. A wooden mask. A bowl of ashes. And next to it, a folded UFC hoodie. On one of the walls, a word written in Portuguese, Poder, power. Soon, fans began to connect the dots. The tattoos on his arms, inspired by his roots, his heritage, suddenly looked like more than just decoration. Some symbols matched markings found in ancient rituals from northern Brazil. Coincidence? Maybe, but the internet doesn't believe in coincidence. The media tried to stay quiet at first. UFC PR didn't comment, but behind the scenes, people close to the organization started whispering that Pereira was acting strange. He had cut contact with friends, stopped responding to messages, and when he finally appeared at an event, his stare was empty, not angry, not proud, just cold. Whatever was happening inside him, it wasn't just about fighting anymore. This was something that went way deeper. And the craziest part, some of the files hinted that he wasn't alone, that there were others, fighters, trainers, maybe even managers, who were part of something hidden, a group connected through what the leaks called the path of power. Was it real? Was it a metaphor? Or was this the kind of secret that's not meant to be spoken out loud? They kept mentioning one name, again and again. In the leaked messages, in the voice notes, even in the encrypted files that hackers claim to have cracked. El Branco. No one knew who he was at first. Some thought it was a nickname. Others believed it was code. A symbol, maybe. But then, one of the messages connected the dots. It said, "El Branco taught me how to channel it. He said the body is just a vessel. The real fight happens in the shadow." The handwriting was unmistakably Pereira's. Same rhythm, same tone. And for those who have followed his career closely, the name El Branco wasn't completely new. Because years ago, long before the UFC, before the glory, there was a man with that same name working in a small gym on the outskirts of Sao Paulo. He disappeared. No one ever found out why. According to local stories, El Branco was known for training the mind through pain. Some called him a genius, others, a madman. He believed that real strength comes when the body breaks and something else takes over. And somehow, after Pereira met him, everything changed. His fighting style became sharper, his power unnatural, and from there, his rise was unstoppable. After the leaks, people went digging into old interviews, gym footage, podcasts, trying to find traces of this man. And they did. In one old, blurry video, you can see Pereira shadow boxing, and behind him, a tall, pale man watching silently. No expression, just watching. And on the wall behind them, faintly visible, the same word that appeared in the leaked photos, Poda. Theories exploded online. Some say El Branco was part of a cult that practiced spiritual combat rituals. Others believe he was a sports psychologist experimenting with extreme conditioning. But here's the strange part. Every fighter who ever trained with him either quit the sport or vanished completely from public life. Coincidence or consequence? When asked about it in a recent press conference, Pereira smiled, that cold, distant smile, and said only one sentence: "Some lessons can't be unlearned." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to, because by then, everyone had already seen enough to start questioning what really fuels a fighter like him. After the name El Branco went viral, the hackers dropped what they called the final folder. They named it simply, The Path of Power. Inside were dozens of PDFs, notes, and transcribed recordings, all in Portuguese. At first, they looked like training programs. But the deeper you went, the stranger it got. Sections titled Energy Transference, The Offering, and the Cage Ritual. Some pages were almost poetic, talking about channeling the pain of the fallen and feeding the flame that never dies. It didn't sound like a workout plan. It sounded like a manifesto. According to the timestamps, many of these files were created just days before Pereira's biggest fights. And in the metadata of one audio file, there was a GPS tag, deep in the Brazilian rainforest, hundreds of miles from any town. People checked the coordinates. There really was a small clearing there, hidden between trees. And if you look it up on satellite view, there's something that looks like a circle burned into the ground. The fans went insane. Conspiracy channels flooded YouTube with theories. Was it performance psychology taken too far? Or something much older? Something that doesn't belong in modern sports? The UFC tried to contain the chaos. No statements, no interviews, no answers. Reporters who brought it up during Media Week were quietly shut down or redirected. But silence only made things louder. Because everyone could see it, Pereira wasn't the same. His stare in press conferences looked distant, almost haunted. He smiled less. He spoke slower. And before one fight, when a reporter asked him directly about the leaks, he just stared for a few seconds and said, "The truth is heavier than you think." That clip went viral overnight. Some called it cryptic. Others said it was a confession. But one thing became clear. Whatever the path of power was, it wasn't just a rumor anymore. Too many details lined up. Too many patterns repeated. And yet, no one could explain what exactly it was. Maybe it started as a mental ritual. Maybe it turned into something darker. Or maybe it's something that can't be explained at all. After the Path of Power leak, the silence from the off was deafening. No official statements. No denials. Nothing. And that silence. It said more than any words could. Reporters started noticing small things. His media appearances were suddenly cut short. His public workouts cancelled without explanation. And those who tried to ask about the leaks stopped getting invited to press events altogether. Something was happening behind closed doors. Something big. People from inside the organization, anonymous, of course, claimed that the UFC SPR team was ordered to contain the narrative. That phrase appeared multiple times in leaked internal emails. But you can't contain curiosity. And by then, the world had already seen too much. Because just when the story started to fade, a new video appeared online. It was short, less than 30 seconds, but it changed everything. The clip showed Pereira in what looked like a warehouse. Dim light, camera shaking, Hess sitting on the floor, shirtless, eyes closed, whispering something in Portuguese. The translation: pain is not the enemy. Pain is the key. Then, a shadow passes behind him, and for a split second, someone else comes into frame. Tall, pale, watching. People froze the video, enhanced the image, adjusted the brightness, and what they saw sent chills down everyone's spine. It looked like El Branco. No one knows where the footage came from. No timestamp, no watermark, no metadata. Just that one haunting clip. Within hours, it spread across Reddit, TikTok, Twitter. Millions of views, endless speculation. Some said it was AI-generated. Others swore it was real. But there was one undeniable fact. Pereira looked terrified. From that moment on, he disappeared from social media. No new posts. No training videos. Only silence. And when he finally reappeared, for his next weighing, he was different. Eyes sunken, movement slower, like the fire inside him had been replaced with something colder. He stepped onto the scale, looked straight at the camera, and said softly, "It's still with me." The room went silent. Nobody knew what he meant, but everyone felt it. Weeks passed. The storm began to fade, or at least that's what people thought. But those who follow digital trails know, nothing on the internet ever truly disappears. Late one night, a new file appeared on a dark web forum. It was labeled simply, LastSession.mp4. The poster claimed it was part of the same cache of hacked data, the one that had started everything. At first, no one believed it. Then they opened it. The footage began with a faint hum, like electricity. A dim room, the same warehouse seen before. Pereira stands in the center, barefoot, breathing heavily. His chest rises and falls like he's just finished a fight. And then, from behind the camera, a voice speaks. Calm, low, unmistakable. El Branco. He says, in Portuguese, "Are you ready to give it back?" Pereira nods. And for the next few seconds, the video turns chaotic. Flashes of light, muffled sounds, then darkness. When the image stabilizes, Pereira is on the ground, motionless, whispering one sentence again and again. "It's gone. It's gone. It's gone." The clip ends there. No timestamp, no location, no proof of authenticity. But the reaction was immediate. Forums exploded. People claimed it was staged. Others said it explained everything. The exhaustion, the silence, the emptiness in his eyes. A few days later, the video vanished from every platform. Copyright strikes, takedown requests, account bans, all within hours. But by then, it was too late. Copies had already spread everywhere. The story couldn't be buried anymore. When reporters tried to reach Pereira for comment, he refused every interview. All he said, through a short post, was, "Some battles are not for cameras." And that was it. No denial, no explanation. Just that one cryptic message, the last thing he's ever posted to this day. For the fans, it left a question that still echoes across every forum and every highlight reel. Was Alex Pereira simply chasing greatness, or did greatness chase him into the dark? There's a moment in every fighter's career when victory starts to cost more than defeat. For Alex Pereira, that moment might have come long before any of us realized, because behind every knockout highlight, behind every slow-motion victory scream, there's something you never see: the price, the blood, the doubt, the things they buried to keep their fire alive. But what happens when that fire starts burning from the inside out? Fans kept searching for answers, digging through podcasts, old training footage, anything that could explain what happened after that leak. But nothing did. No new interviews, no statements from the UFC, just whispers that Pereira had started training alone again. No cameras, no team, no crowd. Some say he's rebuilding himself. Others believe he's trying to forget. But there's one theory, the one nobody wants to say out loud, that maybe he's still fighting something we can't see. Every time he steps into the octagon now, you can feel it. That silence before the bell, that look in his eyes. It's not the look of a man chasing victory. It's the look of someone trying to outrun a memory. And maybe that's what makes him so terrifying. Because he's not fighting an opponent anymore. He's fighting his past. And sometimes the past hits harder than anyone else ever could. The leaked footage, the strange rituals, the shadow of El Branco. Maybe it's all just rumor. Maybe it's performance art, PR manipulation, or just the internet doing what it does best, twisting reality until it breaks. But even if none of it's real, there's something about Pereira that is. The aura, the silence, the way he moves, like a man who's already seen the ending. So maybe the question isn't what did they find when they hacked him. Maybe it's what did he find inside himself that he never wanted the world to see. Because when the cameras turn off, when the crowd goes quiet, and the cage door closes, every fighter faces the same truth. The real opponent was never across from them. It was always inside. The silence surrounding Pereira didn't last, because the internet never sleeps, and curiosity doesn't forgive unanswered questions. A few weeks later, a journalist from Sao Paulo named Mateus Correa claimed to have received an encrypted drive through a private courier. No name, no sender, just a note taped to the front that said, he wasn't alone. Mateus didn't open it right away. He thought it was another hoax. The internet was full of them by then. But when he finally did, what he saw made his hands shake. Inside were dozens of short clips. Some looked like behind-the-scenes training footage, others didn't. One video showed Pereira in the gym, practicing alone. No coach, no music, just the sound of his breathing and the faint echo of someone whispering his name. Another clip showed him staring into a mirror, repeating the phrase "break it" to rebuild it over and over. The deeper Mateus went, the darker it got. There were notes in Portuguese, written in different handwriting, symbols carved into wood, and a file called Project Kairos. The folder contained scanned documents, a mix of medical records, performance data, and psychological evaluations. One report, dated months before his championship fight, had a single red mark at the top, subject showing signs of psychological drift. No one knew what that meant. But for the people who analyzed the leak, it connected everything. The behavior, the silence, the look in his eyes. According to the files, Pereira had been undergoing private neurological conditioning sessions, methods described as extreme sensory recalibration. Whatever that meant, it wasn't part of any normal training program. When journalists tried to verify the authenticity, the clinic mentioned in the documents didn't exist. No registration, no staff, nothing. And yet the logo on the papers matched a small mark tattooed on Pereira's wrist, something fans had noticed before but never questioned. A circular symbol with a line cutting through it, half sun, half shadow. Mateus published his findings, but within 24 hours, his post was taken down. His account was deleted, his domain suspended. He claimed his laptop stopped working the same night. When he tried to boot it up again, the screen displayed a single sentence in white text: "Leave it in the dark." He never posted again. After Mateus vanished from the public eye, people thought the story would die. But then it started happening again. Across different forums, more insiders began mentioning something strange. Athletes disappearing from social media for short bursts of time, then reappearing with a similar look in their eyes. The same hollow calm, the same strange tattoo. It wasn't just Pereira anymore. A middleweight prospect from Brazil, a Muay Thai fighter training out of Thailand, even a retired UFC veteran who had suddenly gone off-grid for 6 months, and returned with that same mark, a half-sun symbol etched faintly into his wrist. When asked about it, they all gave the same answer: it's for balance. But balance of what? Podcasts started calling it the Kairos effect. Some fans said it was a secret conditioning program, a way to unlock hidden potential. Others believed it was something darker, a psychological reprogramming technique, something that could break a fighter's fear or their mind. Then came the pattern. Every fighter linked to Project Kairos had fought in bouts marked by chaos, bizarre incidents, late reactions, vacant stares, brutal finishes that didn't look human, like they weren't fighting for victory anymore but for release. When one analyst played Pereira's last fight in slow motion, he noticed something chilling. Right before the knockout, just a fraction of a second before his opponent fell, Pereira whispered something, barely audible, but when the audio was enhanced, it sounded like, "Break it again." No one knew what it meant, but it sent the internet spiraling. Reddit threads exploded with theories. Was Kairos a code name for a UFC-backed experiment? Was it a cult-like group embedded within the training system? Or was it something more supernatural, something ancient that Pereira had touched long before he ever entered the octagon? A few weeks later, another anonymous file surfaced, this time on an MMA data archive. It was labeled Kairos 03, terminated sessions. The metadata pointed to multiple fighters across continents, and the first name on the list was Pereira. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the file vanished. Every copy, every mirror, gone. Accounts that tried to repost it were shadow banned within minutes. It was clear now. Someone, somewhere, was erasing the story as it unfolded. The deeper investigators dug, the more one thing became clear. Project Kairos wasn't about fighting. It was about control. A whistleblower, claiming to be a former consultant for an unnamed performance research group, reached out to an independent journalist through an encrypted channel. He said the program began years ago, under the guise of mental resilience training for elite combat athletes. But its real purpose was far darker. According to the whistleblower, Kairos was designed to break the human threshold, to erase hesitation, pain, and fear altogether, to create a fighter who wouldn't just survive pressure but need it. Participants were allegedly exposed to extreme sensory deprivation, neural synchronization patterns, and repetitive psychological triggers, methods that blurred the line between discipline and dissociation. The program, he said, worked for a while, until one subject went too far. The files referred to him by a single name, Alpha. And if the timelines matched, Alpha was Alex Pereira. The description matched perfectly. Age, nationality, record, even the timing of his sudden dominance. The leak suggested that during the final phase of the program, the subject began to show external projection behaviors, seeing visions of a figure during training, a figure he called Obranco, the white one. At first, the researchers believed it was a coping mechanism, a way for the mind to rationalize pain and transformation. But over time, Pereira's sessions grew darker. He stopped responding to basic commands. He trained for hours without food or sleep, and every time he was pulled out of the chamber, he said the same words, "Hair's still here." The final report in the folder read, "Subject's identity and purpose emerging. Terminate Project Kairos immediately." But it was too late. 2 weeks later, Pereira walked away from the facility without permission, without warning, and within months, he returned to the octagon a completely different man. The power, the precision, the composure, everyone called it evolution. No one realized it was escape. Because when you break fear completely, something else takes its place. When Pereira finally returned to the spotlight, It wasn't the triumphant comeback everyone expected. It was quiet. Too quiet. He showed up at a press conference in Rio. Leaner, calmer, almost unnaturally composed. But something was off. His eyes didn't move the way they used to. They didn't search for the crowd or the cameras. They just stared straight ahead, like he was listening to someone no one else could hear. Reporters tried to bring up the rumors. The leak. Project Kairos. He didn't flinch. He just smiled and said, "Fear is a door. Most people never open it." Then he left the stage before anyone could ask another question. That clip went viral within hours. People slowed it down, zoomed in, analyzed every frame. And in one freeze frame, right as he stood up, something strange appeared. A reflection, faint but visible, in the mirrored panel behind him. A pale silhouette, just over his shoulder. The same figure that haunted the last session footage. El Branco. Some said it was a lighting glitch. Others said it was proof. But the strangest part came days later, during a fan meet and greet in Las Vegas. A fan posted a selfie with Pereira, smiling, normal, nothing unusual. But when she uploaded the image, the algorithm flagged it for abnormal facial duplication. She didn't understand what that meant until she looked closer. Behind Pereira, in the blurred reflection of a trophy case, there were two faces. Both his. One smiling, one not. After that, Pereira cancelled all public appearances. No more media. No more press. The UFC announced it as personal rest time. But the community knew better. And then, the final message appeared. A post on an obscure fighting forum, from an anonymous account. No name, no profile picture. Just one sentence. He finally opened the door. Attached was a single image. A still frame of Pereira walking into a gym. Only this time, the door behind him was the gym door. It was pure white. And standing just beyond it was the shadow of El Branco. That post stayed online for less than an hour before it was deleted. But not before thousands of people screenshotted it. Because for the first time, it didn't look like Pereira was haunted. It looked like had become the haunting. They say obsession turns champions into legends. But in Pereira's case, it might have turned him into something else. After that final post, he finally opened the door. A new wave of theories flooded the internet. Some believed the door was symbolic, the gateway to complete self-control, to ultimate focus. Others said it wasn't a metaphor at all. They said Pereira had reached a place between consciousness and oblivion, a psychological space, where El Branco waited. One neuroscientist, Dr. Leon Vargas, went viral for her breakdown of the leaked Kairos files. She pointed out something chilling. Every subject exposed to the program's extreme deprivation methods began creating a secondary construct, a mental image that personified their fear. The stronger the subject, the stronger the construct became. Most lost control of it. One didn't. Pereira didn't destroy his fear. He merged with it. According to her theory, El Branco wasn't a ghost or an entity. It was what was left after fear and consciousness became one. And that's why no one could erase him. Because you can't delete what's already inside. It suddenly made sense. The whispers, the rituals, the 1,000-yard stare. All of it wasn't madness. It was metamorphosis. In every fight after that, his movements were mechanical, almost beyond human. Commentators said he looked programmed. Opponents claimed they couldn't read him, as if they weren't facing a man, but a mirror that reflected their own weakness. When asked about his mental state, Pereira only replied with one phrase: "I am not the fighter. I am the silence before the strike." It sounded poetic, but to those who had followed the leaks, it sounded like a warning. Then the strangest part came. During a UFC promotional shoot, a cameraman reported that, while filming Pereira's slow-motion walkout, his lens caught a faint flicker, a white blur trailing behind him. When he reviewed the footage frame by frame, he saw it again. A human shape, pale, still, watching. The footage never aired. And from that day on, Pereira refused to be filmed in shadow. It started as whispers backstage. Little things fighters said when the cameras weren't rolling. A sparring partner in Miami claimed that when he trained with Pereira, the air in the room felt thicker. He couldn't explain it, just that every breath felt heavier, like the space around them was reacting to Pereira's heartbeat. He swore that during one exchange, he blinked, and for half a second, Pereira wasn't there. When he opened his eyes, he was already on the floor. Another fighter, a former kickboxing rival, said that during their stare down, something about Pereira's pupils looked wrong, like they were too still, he said. Like he was looking through me, not at me. It didn't take long before fans noticed a pattern. Every opponent who fought Pereira in the past 2 years disappeared from the public eye soon after. Some for weeks, some for months. No interviews, no podcasts, no gym footage, just silence. When they returned, they all said the same thing. He's not fighting for wins, he's fighting for balance. And one of them, off the record, said something that chilled the community to the core. You can't beat someone who doesn't care if he loses, because he's already lost something bigger. By now, the myth of El Branco had grown beyond any internet rumor. Fans created edits, slowed down clips of Pereira's walkouts, overlaying eerie whispers from the leaked files. In one viral post, a fan claimed to have reversed the audio from a backstage video and heard a phrase whispered in Portuguese. It's open now. The UFC never acknowledged it, but the organization's media team began quietly changing things. Cameras were no longer allowed in Pereira's locker room before fights. Sound engineers were told to remove ambient noise during his walkouts, and every time someone tried to bring up the Kairos theory on air, the broadcast would cut to commercial. Even Joe Rogan, usually unshaken, said during one podcast, "There's something about that dude, man. When he walks in the room just drops 10 degrees. The line went viral, and with it, Pereira's myth reached global scale. He wasn't just a champion anymore. He was something else, a symbol, a story, a shadow that walked into the cage wearing gloves. But legends don't last forever, and what happened next would change everything. The night the silence finally broke. It happened on a Saturday night in Las Vegas, a sold-out arena. The crowd electric. Alex Pereira, calm as ever, walking to the cage with that same expression. Silent, detached, almost serene. But something felt different. Even the commentators said it. The music hit, the lights turned red, but the energy wasn't hype. It was heavy, like the arena itself was holding its breath. His opponent, a tough Brazilian prospect, stared across the cage with nervous focus. Pereira didn't look back. He just tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something behind the noise. The first round started normal enough, measured, technical, but halfway through, everything changed. The cameras caught it first. A flicker in the broadcast feed. Just a single frame. A white distortion passing between them. At first, fans thought it was a glitch. Then it happened again, and again. On the third flicker, Pereira stopped moving. He froze in place, hands down, staring at something the cameras couldn't see. The crowd started to murmur. His opponent hesitated, then backed away, shaking his head like he felt something cold touch his neck. The ref stepped in, confused, asking Pereira if he was okay. No response, just that dead stare. Then Pereira whispered something. The mic barely caught it. One word, in Portuguese. Porta, the door. The next moment was chaos. The lights above the octagon flickered. Half the arena went black. The camera feed distorted, audio cutting out with bursts of static. When it returned, less than 3 seconds later, Pereira was standing over his opponent. The fight was over. No one saw what happened. No punch, no kick, just that flicker and then silence. The ref waved it off. The doctors rushed in. Pereira stood in the corner, unmoving, eyes closed. When they asked him what happened, he whispered again. He opened it, and then he walked out. No celebration, no interviews, just gone. The broadcast replayed the fight again and again. frame by frame. But the 3 seconds of blackness were gone, cut clean from every feed. UFC never addressed it. No official statement. No reply on YouTube. But that night, every fan who was there said the same thing. For just a moment, in that flash of white, there was another figure in the cage. And it wasn't human. The next morning, the internet was on fire. Clips of the fight flooded Reddit, Twitter, Telegram, everywhere. People froze the frames, slowed them down, brightened the shadows, enhanced the contrast, and what they found made even skeptics stop joking. In that missing fragment, those 3 seconds of static, a faint silhouette appeared. Not Pereira, not his opponent, something taller, distorted, and for a single frame, it looked like Pereira's body was shifting, his tattoos glowing faintly blue, like lines pulsing beneath his skin. Within 12 hours, the clip was gone, every upload deleted, accounts banned, even archived versions vanished from the Wayback Machine. But the screenshots survived. People started calling it the entity in the octagon, others called it the door moment. And a few, those who had followed the leaked documents before, recognized the pattern. The word Pereira whispered, Porter, the same word written in the metadata of that mysterious file from the supposed hack. It wasn't a coincidence anymore. A journalist from Mar Fighting tried to publish a full investigation. Screenshots, metadata, timestamps, all of it. 2 days later, his article vanished. His account was deleted. When asked about it on a live stream, he just said, I got a call from someone high up. They told me not to touch it again. Meanwhile, Pereira disappeared from the public eye. No media, no training footage, no interviews. His manager said he was resting spiritually. Dana White refused to comment, but the silence only made it worse. Fans began piecing together everything. The leaked files, the footage, the whispers from former opponents, and they came to one chilling conclusion. Pereira wasn't fighting opponents. He was fighting something else. And that night in Vegas he might have lost. Then, out of nowhere, a new video surfaced, posted anonymously on an obscure channel. The title read, What They Didn't Show You, Pereira Backstage, 4 minutes after the blackout. The clip was grainy, black and white, filmed from a security camera. It showed Pereira walking down the hallway, shirtless, barefoot, breathing slow. Behind him, on the wall, his own shadow wasn't following. It was lagging, moving a split second later, like the delay on a broken screen. The video ended with Pereira looking straight into the camera. He said just one sentence, almost like a warning. Once you open it, it doesn't close. Then the screen cut to black. They say every fighter carries ghosts, but Alex Pereira's weren't just memories, they were echoes. Traces of something ancient, older than the sport, older than the cage itself. Months after the Vegas incident, a new leak appeared. Not on Reddit, not on YouTube, deep on a dark forum, where people traded old tribal footage, banned documentaries, fragments of lost archives. The post was simple. The original ritual, she knew, 1999. It showed a young Pereira, barely a teenager, standing beside an elder wearing a painted mask. They stood inside a chalk circle drawn in ash. The elder spoke a phrase, the same one whispered years later in the cage. Porter Estata Berta, the door is open. Then came the chant, rhythmic, heavy, almost like breathing. And in that grainy footage, just as the firelight flickered, the shadow behind Pereira moved before he did. The clip cut out. Silence. Historians tried to trace it, and they found something unsettling. That ritual belonged to a forgotten Amazonian belief about the guardian between realms, a being that borrowed strength from human vessels through combat, feeding not on victory, but on fear. And in every legend, the same warning repeated: if you call the guardian through violence, it will never leave you in peace. Pereira's tattoos, the geometric lines across his chest and back, weren't random either. They matched diagrams carved on ancient stones from that same tribe. patterns meant to contain something. Suddenly, everything made sense. The silence, the eyes, the word door. Pereira didn't open it by mistake. He had been trying to close it. Every fight, every knockout, every ritual painted before his walkouts. It wasn't showmanship. It was protection. And that night in Vegas he failed. The last confirmed footage of him came weeks later. A blurry cell phone video near the forested border of Brazil. Pereira, alone, walking barefoot toward the trees, carrying nothing but a small clay bowl marked with that same ash circle. The man filming whispered, "Alex, wait." But Pereira never looked back. He just said quietly, "It needs to end where it began." Then he vanished into the darkness. The UFC never spoke his name again. The footage was buried, the contracts dissolved, and his record quietly wiped from the main database. But fans still post that single frame from the Vegas blackout, the one that looks like a figure standing behind him. And every time someone slows it down, enhances it, studies it frame by frame, the same thing happens. The video file becomes corrupted, and when you reopen it, there's a new line in the metadata. Porta estata aberta.